Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Battle Lines. The dust kicked up around Vance Lombard's boots as he crossed the forward operating base in eastern Afghanistan. Morning sun beat down on his broad shoulders as he made his way to the communications tent, the rhythmic cadence of his footsteps matching his heartbeat. 20 years in special operations had hardened him like tempered steel, combat-tested, mission-focused, unbreakable. At 43, he'd seen 3 previous tours and earned a reputation for tactical brilliance and unwavering resolve. "Mail day, Chief," called out Sergeant Wilson, sliding a USB drive across the desk. "Digital drops from home." Vance nodded curtly, tucking the drive into his pocket. He'd wait until after the briefing to check messages from Diana and the kids. 15 years of marriage had taught him to compartmentalize. Family in one box, combat in another. Never the two should mix. His team awaited his arrival in the cramped briefing room. 5 men, the best he'd ever worked with, ready for another high-risk extraction behind enemy lines. He pushed thoughts of home aside, focusing on the mission parameters, terrain maps, and intelligence reports. "We move at 0200, he concluded, after walking through every contingency. Questions? There were none. His men trusted him implicitly. Hours later, alone in his quarters, Vance inserted the USB drive. Diana's email loaded first. The subject line simply read, "Done." His eyes scanned the screen, each word landing like artillery fire on his consciousness. "Halfway through your 4th tour, and I'm done. Don't expect US when you return. We've started over. Kids chose boarding school over you. I've found someone who's actually present." The room felt suddenly airless. 15 years. 2 children. Countless sacrifices. What surprised him most was his own reaction. Not rage, not even shock, just a cold, assessing calm. The same preternatural focus that had kept him alive through ambushes and firefights now sharpened his mind to crystal clarity. He typed a single word in response, "Understood." Then, after a moment's consideration, he forwarded Diana's message to Howard Neville, his attorney back home. No additional comment necessary. Vance shut down the computer and prepared for the night's mission. Whatever storm awaited him stateside could wait. Right now, men depended on him to lead. As he checked his gear, memories flickered like dying embers. Meeting Diana during officer training. Her fiery independence that initially attracted him. The birth of Trent, followed by Naomi 2 years later. The growing silences during his leaves home. The arguments that seemed to multiply with each deployment. "Time to move, Chief," came the call from outside. Vance sealed away thoughts of betrayal, locked them down tight. For now, there was only the mission. 3 days earlier, Diana Lombard stood in the expansive kitchen of their Virginia home, crystal wine glass in hand, as Preston Hendricks traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "You sent it?" Preston asked, his voice carrying the smooth confidence of old money and inherited position. "Just now," Diana confirmed, taking another sip. "Vance probably won't see it for days. Military communications being what they are." Preston smiled, satisfaction evident in his aristocratic features. At 47, he possessed everything Vance Lombard didn't: wealth, connections, and most importantly, daily presence in Diana's life. "And the children?" he asked. "Already enrolled at Westridge Academy. Full scholarships, thanks to your board position." Diana turned to face him. Trent was harder to convince, but Naomi's excited for the opportunity. "Once the divorce is finalized, we'll move them to the lake house," Preston said. "Fresh start for everyone." Diana nodded, though something in her expression wavered. 15 years is a long time to erase. 15 years of playing second fiddle to the military, Preston reminded her. "You deserved better." He didn't mention how meticulously they'd planned this over the past year. How systematically they'd transferred funds, prepared legal groundwork, and manipulated the children's perceptions of their absent father. Diana didn't need reminders of the calculated nature of their betrayal. The wine helped blur those edges. "To new beginnings," Preston toasted, clinking his glass against hers. Diana forced a smile, unaware that the carefully constructed house of cards was already beginning to falter. Chapter 2. Calculated Moves. Howard Neville's law office occupied the top floor of a modest building in downtown Alexandria, Virginia. At 62, he'd built his practice on discretion, competence, and an uncanny ability to anticipate problems before they materialized. When Vance Lombard's email appeared in his inbox, Howard recognized it immediately for what it was, the opening salvo in what would likely become a bitter war. The timestamp caught his attention. Vance had forwarded his wife's message within minutes of receiving it. No emotional outburst. No desperate pleas. Just cold, tactical awareness that legal protection was needed. Howard picked up his phone and dialed a number he rarely used. Reynolds? It's Neville. We need to move on the Lombard contingencies. Immediately. Thomas Reynolds, former military intelligence turned private investigator, had been on retainer for precisely this scenario. 6 months earlier, Vance had visited Howard during leave, expressing concerns about Diana's changed behavior and unexplained financial discrepancies. Just a precaution, Vance had said then, his expression neutral. Probably nothing. But Howard hadn't built a successful practice by ignoring warning signs. With Vance's authorization, he'd established surveillance protocols, financial safeguards, and legal preparations, all dormant until needed. All assets? Reynolds asked over the phone. Everything, Howard confirmed. And I want eyes on the Hendricks situation. Full coverage. Already have preliminary files, Reynolds replied. Diana's been meeting him 3 times weekly. Lake House property. I'll send everything encrypted. Howard hung up and composed a brief response to Vance. Received. Protective measures initiated as discussed. Complete communication blackout recommended until your return. Focus on coming home alive. 3 hours later, Diana Lombard's attempt to access their joint investment account triggered an alert on Howard's phone. The wheels were already turning, exactly as Vance had anticipated they might. Preston Hendricks sat behind his mahogany desk at Hendricks Capital, reviewing the latest acquisition reports when his assistant buzzed through. Mr. Hendricks, there's a call on line 2. He won't identify himself, but says it's regarding the Lombard situation. Preston frowned. Nobody should know about his involvement with Diana. They'd been careful. Put him through, he said, straightening his tie. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, professional, and chillingly direct. Mr. Hendricks, this call is merely a professional courtesy. Certain financial transactions associated with the Lombard family accounts have been temporarily secured. Any attempts to circumvent these measures would be inadvisable. Who is this? Preston demanded, feeling a cold knot form in his stomach. Consider me an interested third party, the voice continued. Mrs. Lombard's communication with her husband has been noted and appropriate measures taken. Good day. The line went dead. Preston immediately called Diana, who answered in a panic. The accounts are frozen, she said, her voice tight with stress. All of them. And the trust fund transfers for the children's tuition bounced. What's happening? He's reacting, Preston realized aloud. Your husband. He must have received your email. That's impossible, Diana insisted. He's in a combat zone. Even if he got it, he couldn't organize this so quickly. Preston's mind raced through possibilities. Unless he anticipated it. Unless he was prepared. For the first time, doubt crept into Preston's calculations. He'd researched Vance Lombard extensively, decorated special operations officer, moderately successful investments, devoted father despite long absences. Nothing in that profile suggested the kind of preemptive financial maneuvering they were witnessing. What do we do now? Diana asked, fear evident in her voice. We stay the course, Preston assured her, though with less confidence than before. My attorneys will handle it. This is just a temporary setback. After hanging up, Preston opened his laptop and began researching Vance Lombard more thoroughly. The military records were mostly classified, but certain patterns emerged: specialized training in psychological operations, advanced tactical planning, and a commendation for exceptional strategic foresight under extreme pressure. Preston closed the laptop slowly, an uncomfortable realization dawning. Perhaps he hadn't been playing chess against an absent, unsuspecting pawn. Perhaps he'd been moving against a grandmaster who'd seen the board from angles Preston hadn't considered. Chapter 3. Return Fire. The military transport touched down at Andrews Air Force Base at 0600, the gray dawn matching Vance's mood as he descended the aircraft ramp. He'd completed his tour 2 months early, pulling strings he'd accumulated over decades of service for an emergency family hardship return. His commanding officer hadn't questioned it. Vance Lombard had never asked for special treatment before. He wore his civilian clothes, plain black t-shirt, jeans, and a leather jacket that had seen better days. No uniform today. This wasn't military business. Howard Neville waited beside a black SUV on the tarmac, looking exactly as he had 6 months earlier. Gray suit, receding hairline, watchful eyes that missed nothing. "Welcome home," Howard said, extending his hand. "Sorry about the circumstances." Vance nodded once, tossing his duffel into the back seat before climbing in. "Brief me." As they drove, Howard outlined what had transpired. Diana had attempted to access and transfer nearly $2 million from their joint accounts. The children had indeed been enrolled at Westridge Academy, with tuition mysteriously covered despite being well beyond what the Lombards could afford. Preston Hendricks' name appeared on documentation as an educational benefactor. "And the countermeasures?" Vance asked. "All executed as instructed," Howard confirmed. "Primary accounts secured. Offshore transfers completed. Property titles temporarily frozen pending legal review." "The children?" Howard's expression softened slightly. "Currently at Westridge." Trent seems confused by the situation. "Naomi is adapting." "Both were told you approved the arrangement before deployment." Vance's jaw tightened, the only visible sign of emotion he'd displayed since landing. "Diana's tried calling you 32 times in the past 48 hours, Howard continued, increasingly agitated. "The last several messages involve threats about what she'll tell the children if you don't unfreeze the accounts." "Let her scream," Vance said quietly. "I want every call recorded and transcribed." The SUV pulled up to a modest hotel on the outskirts of Alexandria, not the Lombard family home. "You're sure about not going to the house?" Howard asked. "Positive," Vance replied. "She doesn't know I'm back. Let's keep it that way for now." Howard handed over a new phone and a thick manila folder. "Everything you requested. Phone secure, untraceable. Reynolds' preliminary findings are in the folder, along with the legal documentation." Vance took both without comment. "What's your next move?" Howard asked. For the first time since landing, a cold smile touched Vance's lips. "Assessment. Planning. Execution. Just like any other mission." "This isn't combat, Vance. Isn't it?" Vance looked his attorney directly in the eyes. "My family, my finances, my reputation, all under attack from hostile forces. Seems like combat to me. The only difference is the rules of engagement." Howard had represented enough military personnel to recognize the shift in Vance's demeanor. This wasn't a devastated husband lashing out emotionally. This was a tactical operator identifying targets and calculating approaches. "Just remember, we want to win in court," Howard cautioned. "Court is part of it," Vance acknowledged. But only part. After the attorney left, Vance unpacked Reynolds' file and began methodically reviewing its contents. Surveillance photos showed Diana and Preston together at restaurants, at his lake house property, entering hotels. Financial records detailed calculated withdrawals that had started small but grown increasingly substantial. Most damning were transcripts of conversations with the children, slowly poisoning them against their father while he served overseas. "Trent, your father chose the military over us again," Diana had said during one recorded conversation. "That's why we need someone like Preston in our lives." When Vance finished reviewing the material, he opened his laptop and accessed a secure email account. He sent a single message to a contact identified only as Bellamy, containing just 3 words. "Activate Prometheus protocol." Then he checked into his hotel room, showered off the last remnants of Afghanistan, and slept for 4 uninterrupted hours, the practiced efficiency of a soldier who knew that the upcoming battle required him at full strength. When his secure phone rang just after sunset, Vance was already awake and alert. "It's done," came the reply. "Initial surveillance placed on all targets. Financial tracking active. Background compilation proceeding." "And the special parameters?" Vance asked. "The psychological profile on Hendricks is almost complete. Primary pressure points identified. Reputation, legacy holdings, board positions. Most vulnerable through public exposure. Diana, emotionally unstable, increasingly dependent on Hendricks for both financial and psychological support. Children are her stated priority, but actions suggest otherwise." Vance absorbed this information silently. "Then, proceed to phase 2. I'll make contact with the children tomorrow." As he ended the call, his regular phone buzzed with incoming text notifications. Diana again, now alternating between threats and sudden pleas for reconciliation. The latest message read, "Please, Vance. Let's talk about this. The kids miss you. I made a mistake." Vance read it twice, recognizing the desperation behind the words. The financial vice was already tightening. "Good." He texted back a single line. "I'll be seeing the children tomorrow at 3 p.m. Alone." Then he turned back to his planning, meticulously plotting each move in a campaign that would leave no survivors among those who had betrayed him. Chapter 4. Blood Ties. Westridge Academy sprawled across 30 manicured acres just outside Arlington, its brick buildings and ivy-covered walls projecting exactly the image of prestige its five-figure tuition promised. Vance arrived at precisely 2:45 p.m., parking his rental car in the visitor's lot. He'd chosen his wardrobe carefully: charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, regimental tie. The uniform of success and authority in civilian life. The school administration had been surprisingly accommodating when he'd called that morning, especially after Howard Neville clarified certain legal and financial realities. Headmaster Phillips met him in the main office, his practiced smile faltering slightly as he took in Vance's imposing presence. "Mr. Lombard, welcome to Westridge. We weren't aware you'd returned from overseas." "Evidently not," Vance replied, voice neutral. "I'd like to see my children privately." "Of course," Phillips nodded, gesturing toward a wood-paneled conference room. "They've been notified and should arrive momentarily. If I might mention, they seem to be under the impression that you approve their enrollment here." "A misunderstanding that will be corrected today," Vance said. Phillips cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Regarding the tuition situation, my attorney will be in touch tomorrow," Vance cut him off. "For now, I'd appreciate privacy with my family." The headmaster retreated just as Trent appeared in the doorway, 16 and already nearly as tall as Vance, though lankier. His expression cycled rapidly from shock to confusion to guarded hostility. "Dad, what are you doing here? Mom said you weren't coming back for months." Before Vance could answer, 14-year-old Naomi appeared behind her brother. Unlike Trent's defensive posture, Naomi launched herself forward, wrapping her arms around Vance's waist. "Daddy, you're home early." Vance embraced his daughter, noting how much she'd grown since his deployment. When he looked up, he caught Trent's expression softening momentarily before the teenager reassembled his defensive wall. "Let's sit down," Vance said, gently disengaging from Naomi's hug, but keeping a hand on her shoulder. "Is Mom coming?" Trent asked, reluctantly taking a seat. "No. This conversation is between us." Trent's eyes narrowed. "If this is about the divorce." "There is no divorce yet," Vance interrupted calmly. "And I didn't approve your enrollment here." Naomi's expression crumpled. "But Mom said." "Your mother said many things that weren't true," Vance continued, his tone softening when addressing his daughter. "I need both of you to listen carefully, because after today, you'll have an important decision to make." He withdrew 2 folders from his briefcase, sliding one toward each child. These contain the truth. Phone records, bank statements, surveillance photos. "I'm not going to tell you what to think. You're old enough to see evidence and draw your own conclusions." Trent stared at the folder without opening it. "You're spying on Mom?" "I protected my family while serving my country," Vance corrected. "When I suspected threats to that family, I took precautions." Naomi had already opened her folder, her young face crumpling as she looked at photos of her mother with Preston. "Who's this man with Mom?" she asked. "Preston Hendricks," Vance answered. "The man your mother left me for while I was deployed. The man who arranged your scholarships here." Trent finally opened his folder, his expression hardening as he flipped through the contents. He paused on a particular document, a transcript of Diana coaching the children on what to say if Vance questioned them about Westridge. "She said you knew," Trent said quietly. "She said you agreed it was better for us." "I never knew," Vance replied. "I never agreed." "So what happens now?" Naomi asked, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Are you taking us home?" Vance leaned forward, his expression earnest. "That depends on you. Both of you are old enough that the courts will consider your preference. If you choose to stay with your mother, I won't fight it. If you choose to come with me, I'll welcome you. But I won't pretend there's a third option where we all reconcile. That door is closed." "Because of him?" Trent asked, pointing to a photo of Preston. "Because of choices," Vance corrected. "Your mother made hers. Now you make yours." Trent's jaw worked, emotion finally breaking through his teenage facade. "You were never home. Ever. 4 tours, plus all the training in between. We barely saw you. I served my country, Vance acknowledged. It required sacrifice from all of us. But I never lied to you. Never betrayed you. Never used you as pawns. The painful truth of those words hung in the air between them. You have 1 week to decide, Vance continued. I've arranged for you both to remain here at Westridge during that time, neutral territory. Your mother can visit. I can visit. But you stay here until you choose. And if we choose differently? Naomi asked, looking worriedly at her brother. For the first time, Vance's composure slipped slightly. Then that would be the hardest outcome of all. But I would respect it. He stood, placing a business card in front of each child. This has my direct number. Call anytime, day or night. I'm staying nearby. As he turned to leave, Trent's voice stopped him. Dad, did you love her? Mom, I mean. Vance paused, considering his answer carefully. For 15 years, I did. With everything I had. After he left, brother and sister sat in silence. The evidence of their mother's betrayal spread before them. Preston Hendricks paced his lakeside study, phone pressed to his ear, as his financial advisor delivered increasingly concerning news. What do you mean, unusual activity? Preston demanded. Be specific. Several of your long-held positions are being systematically targeted, the advisor explained. Someone's acquired substantial short positions against your core holdings. And there are rumors circulating among board members at Westridge about your relationship with a parent. That's impossible, Preston snapped. Those records are sealed. Nevertheless, questions are being raised. The chairman called me directly, asking if you'd used your position to arrange improper financial aid. Preston ended the call and immediately dialed Diana, who answered on the first ring. Vance saw the kids today, she said without preamble, her voice trembling. The school called to inform me. He was there for almost an hour. Did they say what happened? No, just that he met with them privately. They're not answering my calls. Preston, what if he told them everything? Calm down, Preston ordered, though his own composure was rapidly deteriorating. He's trying to intimidate us. It's a standard tactic. Standard tactic? Diana's voice rose. He's a military operator, not a divorce attorney. And he's back 2 months early. How did he even manage that? Preston didn't answer immediately, his mind racing through implications. Has he contacted you directly? No, Diana admitted. Not since that one text about meeting the children. Then we proceed as planned, Preston decided. Have your attorney file the divorce papers tomorrow. I'll have my team investigate these financial anomalies. After hanging up, Preston walked to his window overlooking the lake, unease settling over him like an approaching storm. For the first time in his carefully controlled life, he felt like he was no longer the one manipulating events, but being manipulated by them. His phone buzzed with an email notification from an unknown sender. The subject line froze him in place. Prometheus watches, initial warning. The message contained only an attachment, a detailed dossier on Preston's financial holdings, board positions, and most damaging of all, previous settlements with 2 former employees who had quietly disappeared from his company after filing harassment complaints. Information no one should have had access to. Information that would destroy him if made public. There was no message, no demands. Just the implication that someone held the detonator to explosives carefully placed throughout his life. Preston Hendricks had always considered himself an apex predator in his world of wealth and influence. Now, for the first time, he experienced the cold realization that he might instead be prey. Chapter 5, Cornered Prey. Diana Lombard's perfectly manicured hand trembled as she signed the divorce petition. Her attorney, Maxwell Bennett, watched with professional detachment, having seen hundreds of marriages dissolve across his 27-year career. Once filed, we'll request an emergency hearing for temporary support, Bennett explained. Given the financial restrictions Mr. Lombard has implemented, the court should be sympathetic. Diana nodded mechanically. The past week had spiraled beyond her worst expectations. Not only had Vance frozen their accounts, but the children remained sequestered at Westridge, responding to her texts with terse, noncommittal answers. Preston had grown increasingly distant, preoccupied with mysterious, financial matters he refused to elaborate on. What about the children's custody? She asked. Bennett shifted uncomfortably. Given their ages, the court will consider their preferences heavily. Have they indicated their intentions? They're confused, Diana insisted. Vance has poisoned them against me. With what, specifically? Bennett pressed. Diana's gaze dropped to her lap. Information. Photos. Things taken out of context. Mrs. Lombard, Bennett said carefully, I need to know exactly what evidence your husband might present in court. No surprises. Before Diana could respond, her phone chimed with a text message. From Trent. We need to talk. In person. Tomorrow after classes. Naomi too. Diana showed the message to Bennett, a flicker of hope crossing her features. That's promising, the attorney acknowledged. Children often reconsider initial reactions. Diana nodded, clinging to this small validation. I'll make them understand. Once they hear my side. Just remember, Bennett cautioned, teenagers value authenticity. If you haven't been entirely forthcoming with me about potential vulnerabilities in your case, now would be the time. Diana stiffened. I've told you everything relevant. Bennett studied her for a moment, then nodded once. Then I'll file these papers today. Expect an initial hearing date within 2 weeks. After leaving the attorney's office, Diana drove directly to Preston's corporate headquarters, bypassing his assistant with the familiar confidence of someone accustomed to special access. She found him huddled with 3 men in expensive suits, their conversation ceasing abruptly at her entrance. Diana, Preston said, his tone notably cooler than usual. We're in the middle of something. It's important, she insisted. The children want to meet tomorrow. Preston glanced uncomfortably at his colleagues. Gentlemen, could you give us the room? After they filed out, Preston's professional demeanor crumbled slightly. My shares dropped 12% today. The board is calling an emergency meeting about ethical concerns. 3 major clients have suspended their accounts pending internal review. What does that have to do with us? Everything. Preston snapped. Someone is systematically dismantling my professional life, and it started the exact day your husband returned. Diana paled. That's impossible. Vance doesn't have that kind of influence or knowledge. Apparently, Preston said bitterly, we've both underestimated him. He unlocked his desk drawer and withdrew a folder similar to those Vance had given the children. This arrived yesterday. No sender information. Diana opened it to find comprehensive documentation of her affair with Preston, including dates that predated Vance's deployment. Financial records showing gradual depletion of family accounts. Most damning were transcripts of phone conversations where she and Preston explicitly discussed using the children as leverage against Vance. He can't legally obtain these, she whispered. It's invasion of privacy. Tell that to my board, Preston retorted. They received selected portions yesterday afternoon. Diana sank into a chair, the full implications washing over her. What do we do? Preston's expression hardened. We need leverage. Something to make him back off. Like what? Vance doesn't care about money or reputation. The only thing he truly values is, she stopped, realizing. The children, Preston finished for her. If they choose you, he loses his primary motivation. Diana nodded slowly. The meeting tomorrow. That's my chance to convince them. Make it happen, Preston agreed. Whatever it takes. Meanwhile, I'll see what my investigators have found on your husband. Everyone has secrets. Even decorated soldiers. In a nondescript hotel room, Vance Lombard studied the array of information displayed on 3 laptop screens. Boyd Bellamy, former psychological operations specialist and current private contractor, pointed to financial charts on the center screen. Hendricks Capital stock down 12% today, Bellamy reported. Anonymous tips to board members regarding ethical violations have triggered internal investigations. 3 major clients have suspended their accounts. The psychological pressure? Vance asked. Building nicely, Bellamy confirmed. Hendricks has increased his anxiety medication dosage and canceled 2 major appearances. His assistant reports unusually erratic behavior. Vance nodded approvingly. And Diana's movements. Met with her attorney this morning. Divorce filing processed at 2:15 p.m., currently with Hendricks at his office. Children remain at Westridge, though Trent has requested a meeting with Diana tomorrow. Has she attempted to access any additional financial resources? 3 separate banks declined emergency loans due to the pending litigation flags we placed. Her credit cards are approaching their limits. Vance studied the surveillance photos of Diana leaving her attorney's office, noting the strain evident in her posture and expression. Part of him, a distant, fading part, felt a twinge of regret for what had once been. 15 years. 2 children. Countless shared dreams. You're sure about taking this all the way? Bellamy asked, breaking into his thoughts. There are compromise positions available. Financial settlements that would. No compromises, Vance interrupted, his voice hardening. They betrayed me while I was serving my country. Used my children as weapons. Planned it all methodically, assuming I was too distant to notice, too devoted to fight back. The collateral damage will be substantial. War always has casualties, Vance replied. They declared this one, not me. Bellamy studied his former commanding officer. They'd served together through hell across 3 continents, but he'd never seen this cold, implacable focus directed toward personal matters. The children's meeting with Diana tomorrow, Bellamy noted. Want us to monitor? No, Vance decided. That's their private conversation. I've given them the facts. The choice is theirs. And if they choose her? For the first time, genuine emotion flickered across Vance's features, a flash of pain quickly suppressed. Then I lose the most important battle, he acknowledged. But the war continues. He turned back to the screens, focusing on Preston Hendricks' financial empire. The vulnerable points already identified and targeted, the pressure points still to be exploited. Tomorrow, we move to Phase 3, Vance said, regardless of the children's decision. Bellamy nodded, recognizing the tone of a commander who'd moved beyond consideration to commitment. Whatever happened next, Preston Hendricks and Diana Lombard were about to discover exactly what it meant to become the focus of a man trained to dismantle enemy operations with clinical precision. What about the anonymous emails? Bellamy asked. Hendricks is already searching for the source. Let him search, Vance replied. Fear of the unseen enemy is more destructive than the enemy itself. He'll dismantle his own operation looking for ghosts. As night fell, Vance's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Prometheus operational. All systems green. The final pieces were falling into place. Chapter 6. Lines drawn. The private meeting room at Westridge Academy felt unnaturally quiet as Diana faced her children across a polished oak table. Trent sat ramrod straight, his expression unreadable, while Naomi fidgeted beside him, eyes red-rimmed from recent tears. Thank you for agreeing to see me, Diana began, struggling to keep her voice steady. I know things have been confusing lately. Not confusing, Trent corrected coldly. Just clear for the first time. Diana flinched at his tone, but pressed on. Whatever your father showed you, there's context you're missing. Our marriage had been struggling for years. The constant deployments, the absences. We've seen the timeline, Mom, Trent interrupted. Your relationship with Preston started before Dad's deployment. You planned this while he was still home. Diana hadn't expected this level of specific knowledge. It's complicated, sweetheart. Adult relationships, sometimes. Stop lying. Naomi burst out, tears streaming down her face. The transcripts show everything. You told us Dad approved the school, but he never did. You said he didn't want to talk to us during deployment, but the call logs show you blocked his numbers. Diana paled. That's not true. We have the phone records, Trent said quietly. Every call he made that never reached us. Every message intercepted. Those could be fabricated, Diana insisted. Your father is manipulating you. Like you manipulated us about the boarding school. Trent challenged. Like you manipulated our trust fund money to pay for your affair. Diana's carefully prepared explanations crumbled under the weight of evidence she hadn't anticipated. I made mistakes, she admitted. But everything I did was to secure our future. Preston can provide opportunities your father never could. Dad risked his life serving our country, Naomi said, while you were stealing from us. The accusation hung in the air like poison. You have to understand, Diana tried again, desperation creeping into her voice. If you choose to live with your father, you'll barely see him. He'll deploy again, leave you with relatives or caretakers. With me and Preston, you'll have stability, opportunities. We've made our decision, Trent interrupted, his voice suddenly older than his 16 years. Diana felt her heart plummet. Both of you, both of us, Naomi confirmed quietly. We're going with Dad, Trent announced. We've already informed Headmaster Phillips and signed the preference statements for the court. Diana's composure finally shattered. You can't do this to me. After everything I've sacrificed. You didn't sacrifice anything, Trent cut in, standing abruptly. You took. From Dad. From us. And now you're facing the consequences. I'm your mother. Diana cried. Yes, Naomi acknowledged sadly. And we still love you. But we can't trust you anymore. As her children walked out of the room, Diana remained frozen in place, the carefully constructed narrative of her victimhood collapsing around her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Preston. How did it go? She couldn't bring herself to respond. Preston Hendrick's world was unraveling with terrifying speed. The board vote was unanimous. His corporate attorney informed him grimly. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending investigation. Your access to company systems has been revoked. Preston stared out his office window, watching employees hurriedly packing their belongings below, collateral damage from his sudden fall from grace. The allegations can't be substantiated, Preston insisted. Anonymous tips aren't evidence. The supporting documentation was extensively detailed, the attorney countered. And 3 former employees have now come forward with corroborating accounts, along with evidence their settlements included illegal non-disclosure provisions. Who's behind this? Preston demanded. It has to be Lombard. The attorney shook his head. There's no connection to him in any of the documentation. The information appears to come from internal sources, accounting discrepancies, HR violations, board meeting minutes where you overrode compliance concerns. Those records were secured. Apparently not securely enough. After the attorney left, Preston tried Diana's number again, cursing when it went straight to voicemail. His own phone had been ringing constantly. Reporters, board members, nervous investors. The empire he'd spent 20 years building was imploding in less than a week. His computer chimed with an incoming email. Another anonymous message, subject line. Prometheus Phase 3 initiated. The attachment contained a comprehensive analysis of Preston's offshore accounts. Tax havens he'd assured Diana were untraceable. Accounts that contained millions diverted from corporate holdings and investor funds. The message body contained just one line. IRS Criminal Investigation Division receives this tomorrow. Preston frantically dialed his personal banker in the Caymans, who confirmed the worst. Someone initiated transfer protocols using authenticated credentials. The accounts have been emptied. That's impossible. I have the only access codes. Nevertheless, Mr. Hendricks, the transfers were properly authenticated. To numbered accounts we cannot trace. Panicking now, Preston tried calling Diana again. This time she answered, her voice hollow. The children have chosen Vance, she said without preamble. They've signed legal statements for the court. Forget the children for a moment, Preston snapped. We have bigger problems. My offshore accounts have been compromised. The board has suspended me. The IRS is being handed evidence of tax evasion. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to leave. Today, I have emergency funds and identities prepared. We can be in Buenos Aires by morning. Silence stretched across the line. Diana, did you hear me? This is serious. You want me to abandon my children? She finally asked. They've already abandoned you. Preston reminded her harshly. And in 24 hours, we'll both be facing criminal investigations. Is that what you want? Diana's voice hardened. This is your mess, Preston, not mine. Your husband is behind all of this. We're in this together. No, Diana said with sudden clarity. We're not. Not anymore. The line went dead. Preston stared at his phone in disbelief. Abandoned. Exposed. Hunted. He grabbed his laptop and emergency go-bag from the hidden safe behind his office bookshelf. The contingency plans he'd created for worst-case scenarios were now his only hope. Before corporate security could arrive to escort him out, Preston slipped through his private elevator to the parking garage. As his Porsche roared toward his lake house, where additional cash, passports, and resources were secured, Preston failed to notice the unmarked sedan that fell into position 3 cars behind him. Inside that sedan, Boyd Bellamy spoke quietly into his secure phone. Target in motion. Proceeding exactly as predicted. On the other end, Vance Lombard's response was simple: maintain surveillance. Intervention only if he deviates from expected route. The trap was set, the prey running precisely where intended. The hunt was entering its final phase. Chapter 7, Fallen Queen. Diana Lombard sat alone in the expansive kitchen of the house she'd once shared with Vance, nursing a glass of whiskey as rain lashed against the windows. Her attorney's words still echoed in her mind, clinical and devastating. The judge has granted temporary full custody to your husband. Given the financial evidence and the children's explicit preference, contesting further would be expensive and likely futile. In 7 days, her carefully constructed life had disintegrated completely. Preston had disappeared after their last phone call, his lake house found empty by authorities investigating financial irregularities. Her credit cards had been declined when she attempted to check into a hotel. Even her mother had refused to take her calls after receiving an anonymous package detailing Diana's betrayals. The doorbell rang, startling her from dark thoughts. Standing on her porch, rain-drenched and grim-faced, was Howard Neville. "Mrs. Lombard." He greeted formally once she'd opened the door. "May I come in?" Diana stepped aside wordlessly, noting the thick portfolio he carried. "My client has authorized me to present settlement terms," Howard said, placing documents on the kitchen counter. "He believes these will be more favorable than what you'd receive through continued litigation." "Where is he?" Diana asked. "Why doesn't he face me himself?" "Mr. Lombard is currently relocating with the children," Howard replied. He felt direct contact would be unproductive. Diana laughed bitterly. "Coward." Howard's expression remained professionally neutral. "The terms are straightforward. You receive this house, cleared of liens. A modest monthly support payment for 2 years, contingent upon psychological counseling and substance abuse treatment. Supervised visitation with the children, gradually increasing based on counselor recommendations." "Supervised?" Diana's voice rose incredulously. "I'm their mother." "A mother who conspired to alienate them from their father," Howard countered coldly. "A mother who misappropriated their trust funds. The court already agreed with our assessment." Diana sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. "And if I fight this?" "Then we proceed to trial with the full evidence package," Howard said, "including materials not yet presented to the court regarding your involvement in Mr. Hendrick's financial improprieties." Diana's head snapped up. "I had nothing to do with Preston's business affairs." Howard withdrew a particular document from his portfolio. "Your signature on these offshore transfer authorizations suggests otherwise." Diana stared at the paper, recognizing her signature but not the document itself. "This is fabricated. I never signed this." "Perhaps," Howard acknowledged with unsettling equanimity. "But banking authorities and prosecutors tend to believe notarized documents over verbal denials." The implied threat hung heavy in the rain-cooled air. "He planned all of this," Diana whispered, horrified comprehension dawning. "From the beginning." "Mr. Lombard protected his family," Howard corrected. "The consequences you're experiencing result from your own actions." Preston said Vance was behind his financial collapse. Howard's expression revealed nothing. "Mr. Hendricks appears to have made many enemies through his business practices. His legal problems stem from his own documented misconduct." Diana studied the attorney's impassive face, searching for confirmation of her suspicions. "Tell me the truth. How long has Vance been watching us? Planning this systematic destruction?" "My client foresaw potential threats to his family and took precautionary measures," Howard replied carefully. "The scale of intervention escalated proportionally to the threat discovered." Diana laughed hollowly. "I never really knew him, did I? All those years." "Few people truly do," Howard agreed, his tone softening slightly. "The settlement offer expires in 48 hours. I suggest you review it with your attorney." After Howard left, Diana poured another drink and opened the settlement documents. The terms were precisely as described, survivable but humbling. A shadow of the life she'd planned with Preston, but more than she deserved given what she'd attempted to take from Vance. Her phone rang, an unknown number. Hoping against hope it might be Preston with some solution, she answered. "Mrs. Lombard," came an unfamiliar male voice. "My name is Agent Keller, Federal Bureau of Investigation. We'd like to speak with you regarding your financial relationship with Preston Hendricks." Diana closed her eyes, the last pillars of her former life crumbling around her. "When?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Our agents are currently parked outside your residence," came the reply. "We can proceed now, or you can meet us at our field office tomorrow morning with your attorney present." Diana glanced out the window, noting the dark sedan now visible through the rain. "I'll come with you now," she decided, suddenly desperate to escape the empty house filled with memories of a family she'd destroyed. "I have nothing to hide." As she gathered her purse and coat, Diana caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. Designer clothes, perfect makeup, hollow eyes. The woman who had believed herself too good for a military husband, too entitled to honor commitment, too clever to get caught. She barely recognized herself. Vance Lombard stood at the window of a modest but comfortable rental home, watching Trent and Naomi explore the backyard despite the light drizzle. They'd arrived yesterday, their few personal belongings hastily packed from Westridge Academy, their futures uncertain but somehow lighter without the weight of their mother's manipulations. "They're resilient," observed Louise Patterson, Vance's sister, as she joined him at the window. 10 years his junior and fiercely protective, Louise had flown in from Colorado immediately upon learning of the situation. "They shouldn't have to be," Vance replied grimly. "They deserved better." From Diana, "Yes," Louise agreed. "But they got the father they needed." Vance turned from the window. "Did they? I was absent for most of their lives. Physically, maybe. But they never doubted your commitment." Louise squeezed his shoulder. "And now you're here when it counts most." Vance's secure phone vibrated with a text message. "Settlement delivered. Deconsidering options. FBI making initial contact now." He slipped the phone back into his pocket without responding. Phase 3 was proceeding exactly as planned. "Will you tell them?" Louise asked quietly. "About everything you did to protect them?" Vance shook his head. "They don't need to know the details. Only that their father kept his promises." "And Diana? Preston? How far does this go?" Vance's expression hardened. "Diana has a path to redemption if she chooses it. Limited, supervised access to the children. Financial support while she rebuilds her life. It's more than she offered me. And Hendricks? He made different choices. Different consequences." Louise studied her brother carefully. "The financial collapse, the federal investigation, that's all you're doing, isn't it?" "Hendricks destroyed himself," Vance replied carefully. "I merely ensured his actions came to light. Through your mysterious Prometheus protocol." Louise pressed. Vance allowed himself a small, cold smile. "Special operations teaches you to identify pressure points in enemy infrastructure. Create the right vulnerabilities, apply pressure at the right moment, and systems collapse from within." "He's running, you know," Louise noted. "The news says federal authorities have issued warrants." "I know exactly where he is," Vance replied. "And exactly where he's going." Louise shivered slightly, suddenly reminded that beneath her brother's controlled exterior lay the calculated precision that had made him legendary in military circles. "You've changed, Vance," she observed. "There's something harder in you now." "Not changed," he corrected. "Revealed. We show our true nature not in comfort, but in crisis." Before Louise could respond, Naomi burst through the back door, rain-speckled and smiling for the first time since Vance's return. "Dad, Trent found a treehouse in the big oak. Come see." Vance's severe expression immediately softened. "Lead the way, sweetheart." As he followed his daughter into the yard, Vance allowed himself to momentarily set aside thoughts of Diana's downfall and Preston's impending destruction. There would be time enough for that once the children were settled. For now, they needed a father, not an avenger. But Prometheus continued working silently in the background, the trap already set for the final act of justice. Chapter 8, Checkmate. Preston Hendricks gunned the engine of his sleek black Porsche along the winding mountain road, glancing nervously at his rearview mirror for any sign of pursuit. 3 days on the run had left him haggard and paranoid. His normally immaculate appearance had deteriorated to stubbled cheeks and rumpled clothes, his privileged polish eroded by desperation. The lake house had yielded his emergency resources, $50,000 in cash, 3 alternate identification packages, and a loaded Glock he'd purchased years ago but never needed to use. His final destination was a remote cabin in the Adirondacks, owned through a shell corporation that even Diana didn't know about. From there, he could arrange transport to Canada, then overseas. His phone, a burner purchased at a truck stop, buzzed with a news alert. He glanced down at the headline. Diana Lombard cooperating with federal investigators in Hendricks' financial probe. "Bitch," he muttered, tossing the phone onto the passenger seat. She'd turned on him, just like everyone else. After everything he'd promised her, everything they'd planned together. The mountain road narrowed as it climbed higher, pine trees crowding closer to the asphalt. Preston checked his GPS, 30 miles to the hidden access road that would lead to his cabin. Then safety, at least temporarily. He rounded a sharp curve and immediately slammed on his brakes. A black SUV sat horizontally across the road, blocking both lanes. Preston's Porsche skidded to a stop mere feet from collision. Before he could reverse, another vehicle appeared behind him, an identical SUV, effectively boxing him in. Preston reached for the Glock in his glove compartment, his hand trembling. The driver's door of the forward SUV opened. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, military-bearing. Even without having seen photographs, Preston instantly knew who it was. Vance Lombard. Preston's blood ran cold. How had Lombard found him? How had he known this escape route that no one else knew about? Another man emerged from the rear vehicle, younger, with the same alertness but a leaner build. Both men approached Preston's car with measured steps, neither appearing armed but both radiating lethal capability. Preston raised the Glock, pointing it through the windshield at Vance, who continued his steady approach, seemingly unconcerned by the weapon. Heart pounding, Preston rolled down his window. "Stay back," he shouted. "I'll shoot." Vance stopped 10 feet from the car, his expression impassive. "No, you won't," he replied calmly. "If you were capable of that kind of direct violence, you wouldn't have manipulated my wife to do your dirty work." "What do you want?" Preston demanded, the gun still pointed but now visibly shaking in his grip. "A conversation," Vance replied. "One you won't enjoy. I have nothing to say to you." "Then you can listen." Vance took another step forward. "Lower the gun, Hendricks. You're not going to shoot a decorated military officer on American soil. Your legal troubles are bad enough already." Something in Vance's absolute certainty made Preston's resolve waver. Slowly, he lowered the weapon to his lap, though he kept his finger near the trigger. "How did you find me?" he asked. Vance smiled thinly. "You think you covered your tracks. Hidden assets. Shell corporations. Escape plans. But I've been tracking men who actually know how to disappear, trained operatives with government resources, for 20 years. You're an amateur. You've ruined me," Preston said bitterly. "My company, my reputation, everything." "No," Vance corrected. "You ruined yourself. I simply ensured you couldn't escape the consequences." The second man, Bellamy, approached the passenger side of Preston's car. "Your offshore accounts have been emptied," Vance continued. "Not by me. That would be illegal. But I made sure the right people knew where to look. The evidence has been delivered to the FBI, SEC, and IRS. 3 former employees have come forward about sexual harassment settlements. 2 board members have provided evidence of financial misconduct." Preston's face drained of color. "This is about Diana. I get it. You want revenge because I took your wife." Vance's expression hardened. "This isn't about Diana. She made her choices. This is about using my children as pawns while I was serving my country. About manipulating them against their father. About believing that your money and privilege put you beyond accountability." "What do you want from me?" Preston asked, desperation creeping into his voice. "Money? I still have resources you don't know about. We can make a deal." "I don't want anything from you," Vance replied coldly. "I want justice for my family, and you're going to face it." He nodded to Bellamy, who pressed a button on his phone. Seconds later, the distant sound of helicopter rotors became audible, growing steadily louder. "Federal agents have been tracking your phone since you purchased it," Vance explained. "They're very interested in speaking with you." "You set me up," Preston realized, panic rising. "This whole escape route. You led me here." "Like I said," Vance replied, "you're an amateur." The helicopter appeared overhead, FBI markings clearly visible as it searched for a landing zone on the mountain road. "You think this is over?" Preston snarled, desperation giving way to rage. "I still have leverage. Diana knows things about you, things she told me. Military operations, classified actions. I have friends in the media who would love to expose a decorated officer's dirty secrets." For the first time, Vance's composure cracked slightly, not in fear, but in genuine amusement. "Diana doesn't know anything about my classified operations. She never did. That's what you haven't understood from the beginning, Hendricks. I compartmentalize. The man who served overseas? The man who planned your downfall? Those are facets my family never saw." The helicopter began its descent onto a wider section of road 50 yards ahead. Uniformed agents emerged from the tree-line, weapons ready but not raised. "One last thing," Vance said, stepping closer to Preston's window. "The Prometheus Protocol wasn't just about exposing your crimes. It was about giving you a choice, the same choice you forced on my family. Run and be hunted, or face the consequences of your actions. Preston's hand tightened on the gun in his lap. For a moment, something dangerous and cornered flashed in his eyes. Don't, Vance warned quietly. My children have lost enough already. The fight visibly drained from Preston as the federal agents approached. With trembling hands, he placed the gun on the dashboard and raised his hands. This isn't justice, he said bitterly. This is vengeance. The difference, Vance replied as agents reached the vehicle, is that justice follows the law. I made sure everything that happens to you is legal, documented, and by the book. He stepped back as agents opened Preston's car door. That's the thing about men like you, Hendricks. You break rules because you think they don't apply to you. I follow them because I know they're what separates us from chaos. Preston's expression contorted with hatred as agents handcuffed him. Your wife never loved you, he spat. She said you were cold, distant, empty inside. She called you a machine. Vance watched him passively as the agents led Preston toward the helicopter. She wasn't entirely wrong, he acknowledged to himself. But machines serve a purpose, and mine was protecting what matters. As the helicopter lifted off with Preston secured inside, Bellamy approached his former commander. It's done, he said simply. Vance nodded once. Prometheus complete. Shut it down. And Diana? She made her choice, Vance replied. The consequences are hers to bear. Together, they walked back to their vehicles, leaving behind the mountain road where Preston Hendricks' carefully constructed life had finally crumbled to nothing. Chapter 9, Scorched Earth. 3 months later, Vance Lombard sat in Howard Neville's office, reviewing the final divorce decree. The terms were exactly as they'd offered in the settlement. Diana received the house and modest support, while Vance retained full custody of the children with provisions for supervised visitation after Diana completed counseling. She's following the treatment program, Howard noted, observing Vance's expression as he reviewed the visitation schedule. The counselor reports genuine progress. Good for the children's sake, Vance acknowledged without emotion. They need some relationship with their mother, however limited. And Hendricks. Plea agreement finalized last week. 8 years federal time, full asset forfeiture, permanent industry ban. Howard studied his client carefully. Does it feel like victory? Vance set down the documents. Victory implies there was something to win. This was damage control, nothing more. Outside the office windows, fall had painted the Virginia landscape in brilliant reds and golds. 3 months had brought significant changes. A permanent home for Vance and the children, Trent's improved grades at his new school, Naomi's gradually returning smile. Small victories in a war that had left permanent scars. The children have asked to see their mother next month, Vance said. Supervised as agreed. And you're comfortable with that? My comfort isn't relevant. Their healing is. Vance signed the final page of the divorce decree. I won't stand in the way of whatever relationship they choose to have with Diana. But I won't pretend for their sake, either. Meaning I'll never forgive her, Vance stated plainly. Not for the affair, not for the betrayal, not for using our children as weapons. That chapter is permanently closed. Howard nodded, understanding the finality in his client's voice. And your military career? The Pentagon has offered reinstatement with promotion. Declined, Vance replied. My children need stability now. I've accepted a private security consulting position. Limited travel, regular hours. As they concluded their business, Vance's phone buzzed with a text from Louise. Kids picked up from school. Trent aced his history test. Dinner at 6. A small smile, genuine, unguarded, briefly softened Vance's features. Outside the law office, autumn sunlight bathed the streets in golden light as Vance walked to his car. 3 months ago, he'd returned from combat to find his personal life under attack. He'd responded with the same methodical precision that had kept him alive through 20 years of military service, identifying threats, developing strategy, executing with unwavering resolve. The cost had been high. His marriage destroyed. His children traumatized. His trust in relationships permanently damaged. But he protected what mattered most, and that was enough. Diana Lombard sat alone on a park bench, watching families stroll along tree-lined paths as she waited for her weekly counseling appointment. The past 3 months had stripped away everything she'd once considered essential: social standing, financial security, even her role as mother. The federal investigation had eventually cleared her of criminal involvement in Preston's schemes, accepting her cooperation as evidence of ignorance rather than complicity. But the social judgment had been harsher. Friends had disappeared. Country club memberships quietly lapsed. Invitations stopped arriving. Her phone chimed with a calendar reminder, 30 days until her first supervised visit with the children. The court-appointed counselor had been surprisingly supportive, helping Diana confront hard truths about her choices, her motivations, her failures as a wife and mother. It's not about forgiveness, the counselor had explained during their last session. It's about accountability. Your children need to see you accept responsibility without excuses before healing can begin. Diana had nodded, understanding intellectually but struggling emotionally with the humbling reality of her position. She'd thrown away a devoted husband and damaged her children's trust, all for a relationship built on lies and manipulation. As she walked toward her counselor's office, Diana passed a newsstand with the day's headlines. Preston's face stared back from the financial section. Hendricks' sentencing concludes federal fraud case. She didn't stop to read it. Preston Hendricks belonged to her past now, along with the woman she'd been while with him, entitled, selfish, blind to consequences. The path forward was steeper and far less glamorous, but it was the only one available. Her counselor had asked during their first session what Diana wanted most from the future. A second chance with my children, she'd answered without hesitation. And Vance? The counselor had pressed. Do you want reconciliation there as well? Diana had laughed bitterly. Vance doesn't give second chances. Not to those who betray him. I burned that bridge completely. Now, approaching the counselor's office, Diana accepted that reality without self-pity. Some actions couldn't be undone. Some trust, once broken, could never be restored. But perhaps, with time and genuine change, she could earn a place, however small, in her children's lives again. It would never be what it was, but it might eventually be something real. In the backyard of their new home, Vance watched Trent practicing lacrosse shots against a net while Naomi sketched beneath a maple tree. 3 months of stability had begun healing wounds that had seemed irreparable upon his return. Louise emerged from the house with a tray of drinks. Earth to Commander Lombard, she teased. Dinner in 20 minutes. Vance accepted the offered glass, his gaze still on his children. They're adapting better than I expected. Kids are resilient, Louise replied. Especially when they know they're safe. Safe, Vance repeated thoughtfully. That was always the mission, wasn't it? In the field and at home. Speaking of missions, Louise said carefully, Boyd called. Asked if you'd reconsider the Pentagon's offer. Vance shook his head. That chapter's closed. Is it? Or are you just afraid of leaving them again? Vance turned to his sister, his expression softening slightly. Not afraid. Clear-eyed. I spent 15 years protecting strangers while failing to protect my own family. I won't make that mistake again. You didn't fail them, Vance. Diana did. I failed to see the thread until it was almost too late, he corrected. That's on me. Trent jogged over, slightly breathless from practice. Dad, can we order pizza tonight instead? Coach says I need more protein. Nice try, Vance replied with a rare smile. But Louise has already started dinner. Worth a shot, Trent grinned, the easy exchange revealing how their relationship had strengthened over recent months. As the family gathered around the dinner table that evening, Vance observed the gradual healing taking place. Trent talked animatedly about school. Naomi shared her latest art project. Louise teased them both mercilessly, as only an aunt could. They weren't unscathed. Naomi still sometimes cried at night for her mother. Trent occasionally withdrew into brooding silence. The upcoming supervised visit with Diana loomed, as both anticipated and dreaded. But they were moving forward. Not as the family they had been, but as the family they could still become. Later that night, after the children had gone to bed, Vance sat alone on the back porch, nursing a single glass of bourbon. His phone lit up with a message from Howard, final paperwork filed. Divorce officially complete. He set the phone aside, letting the finality of that statement settle over him. 15 years of marriage, ended with legal documents and court proceedings. The betrayal still burned when he allowed himself to feel it, which wasn't often. Diana had made her choice. Preston had calculated wrong. Both had paid the price for underestimating him, for believing that his absence meant weakness, for thinking they could use his children as pawns without consequences. Vance had responded as he'd been trained. identifying the threat, developing strategy, executing with precision. No emotion, no hesitation, no forgiveness. The mission was complete. His family, or what remained of it, was secure. As he gazed up at the star-filled sky, Vance acknowledged the truth that Diana had sensed but never fully understood. Part of him was indeed machine-like, cold, calculating, relentless when threatened. The same qualities that had kept him alive through combat served him now in civilian life. He wouldn't apologize for that nature, wouldn't pretend remorse for actions that had protected his children, wouldn't offer forgiveness to those who had betrayed sacred trusts. Some fires weren't meant to be extinguished. Some bridges were meant to stay burned. Some betrayals couldn't, and shouldn't, be forgiven. Vance Lombard finished his bourbon and returned inside, closing the door on the past and focusing only on what remained. The mission still before him, the family still worth fighting for, and the uncompromising code that defined him. Not all warriors laid down their swords when leaving the battlefield. Some carried them forever, not out of inability to change, but out of clear-eyed understanding of human nature. Trust, once shattered, could never be fully restored. Betrayal, once committed, permanently altered the landscape. This was his truth, unapologetic and absolute. And in this, as in all things, Vance Lombard remained unforgiving.